Hey everyone, Paul here, and I want to talk about 5 things that I wish I would have known about money sooner. And the first one on the list is the difference between wealth and income. And this is one where I think it can be really straightforward when you think about it, but I think a lot of people think about it incorrectly. And in fact, it sounds like a trick question. If I was going to ask you in the next year, if you were going to make $100,000 at your job, how much money would I need to be able to mirror your lifestyle for the next 12 months, for the next year? And you might think to yourself, well, obviously you would need $100,000. If I'm making 100,000, that's what you would need in the bank to be able to do that. And the reality is that's just not true because, of course, with your $100,000 job, that's a nice income. But at the end of the day, your take-home pay is probably going to be closer to maybe 60 something thousand, maybe lower 70s, and that's going to depend on whether or not your state taxes you, what city you live in. So there's some nuances there, but generally speaking, you're going to be taking home about 30% less than that, right? So I would really only need about $65,000 in the bank potentially to match your $100,000 income. And I think thinking about it in those terms, I think just really kind of changes things a little bit in terms of how much you actually need to have saved to be able to replace your job income, right? So again, if you say, hey, I want to go, 2 years and be able to maintain my $100,000 job lifestyle, right? And then all of a sudden it's like saying you need 130,000 saved to do that instead of 200,000. So it starts to sound a little bit more doable. Certainly a big hill to climb, but just again, that understanding about wealth versus income. And I can tell you that was a big thing that I feel like I focused on the wrong one coming out of college. I think that I was really, focusing on, hey, how can I increase my income through raises, and I want to get that next bump, or you want to get that promotion. And I think I would kind of scorecard myself to some extent, which is never healthy to do. Certainly I've made strides in that since then, but I think I'd kind of scorecard myself in terms of what other people were making with their income. And if my income was higher, I would kind of feel better about myself. And I think that if you are going to compare yourself at all, financially, that it makes a lot more sense to compare wealth because you could be, making $40,000 a year and never make more than that. But if you're living less than what you make and you're investing wisely and doing all those things, you could still end up being a millionaire. Or conversely, you could be somebody who's making $1 million a year and end up still living paycheck to paycheck or being broke or bankrupt, right? So both of those extremes are possible. The second thing I wish I would have thought about money differently earlier in my life is the fact that you can save money without necessarily having it be for retirement. And I think there's such a premium where I think a lot of people talk about saving money these days. They talk about, oh, you need to have X amount saved for when you're 60 or 65 or 70 or whatever the conventional retirement age is now. And I think what that does is I think that kind of puts a lot of people, or turns a lot of people off from investing when they are 18, 19, or in their 20s, because they're thinking to themselves, why save now for, me being 65, 70? That feels so far out into the future that I think a lot of people start delaying the saving process. And so how can you get around that? Well, I think you get around that by saying, well, what if your goal is to be able to say that you want to have, enough money saved up where you could go 2 years without a job? And that could be for different reasons. Maybe you want to go 2 years without a job because you want to spend a year traveling the world, and then you want to give yourself a year to re-enter the workforce. You might say, hey, I want to give myself 2 or 3 years of cushion because I want to become an online entrepreneur, or I want to write a book, and I want to give myself a window of time to pursue that. But same kind of thing where it's like, if it doesn't work out, hey, you've got some money in the bank where you're certainly not feeling the pressure to pay rent and bills and things like that, so you're covered from that standpoint. So again, the idea that you can have more micro goals than just saving for retirement, I think is something that would help a lot of people, would have helped me, again, to think about saving earlier. And now I've put myself in a situation, even though I was starting later than I was, obviously would be ideal, but in the last couple of years, I've gotten to the point where I can now live on my savings for about the next 3 years. And again, it's a good place to be. It gives you a lot of options in terms of what you want to do as far as either side hustles or what you want to do with your career. It gives you a lot of flexibility. And that really segues nicely into number 3, which number 3 is just thinking about wealth in terms of how long it could sustain your lifestyle. And when you start thinking about it in that way, there's really 2 main components. There's how expensive is your lifestyle and how much wealth do you have, right? Because by the same token, if you have $100,000 saved and you have a $100,000 lifestyle, obviously you can go 1 year, right? So you're more limited. But if you've got yourself, kind of tightened down to where it's a $20,000 a year lifestyle, you've got 100,000, you can go for 5 years, right? So again, those 2 main components: how expensive is your lifestyle and how much wealth do you have? But when I started thinking about my own wealth in terms of how long I could sustain my lifestyle without any additional income coming in, I think that that became, really motivating to want to grow that. And I started thinking about wealth in terms of, every X amount of dollars I'm getting is going to allow me to go one extra month, one extra week, or one extra year, whatever that might be. And again, I think for me, that was a premium that I placed on, because I think that, when you look at a lot of things here, that time is one of the most valuable commodities, and you can't get time back. You can always potentially make more money, right? So for me, thinking about wealth in terms of how much time, am I able to sustain my lifestyle, was really revolutionary for me. And number 4 is, so you can think about your wealth in terms of, how long you could go, like you're going to exhaust your wealth. But then you can also start to think about your wealth in terms of, how much would I need to be able to maintain my lifestyle with the investment income? And that could be in different ways. That could be, how many rental properties do I need to be able to say I can live off the rental income and I would no longer need anything else. It's like I've got a series of assets, or I've got these real estate assets that are now going to cash flow and sustain my lifestyle in perpetuity, basically. And you can do the same thing with stocks in terms of either, the actual appreciation of the stock value, or dividend payments, which is more likely. You can find, solid profitable companies that are growing and continuing to raise their dividends. And if you get enough money, you can start to live off of that as well. But again, it's knowing what that number is, and knowing when you kind of cross that threshold. Because, at least in my own example, if I was going to have no additional income and I'm going to try to maintain my lifestyle and I've only got $25,000 invested, that's nowhere near enough where the investment income is going to allow me to go, let's say, more than a year without income. But if all of a sudden, if I start having $250,000 invested, and I'm able to, earn a 10-12% return on that on an annual basis, all of a sudden that amount of money gives me, or allows me to start the conversation that maybe I have enough to be able to live on my investment income alone. So it's kind of knowing, again, what your monthly expenses are, knowing when you're going to get to that inflection point where your wealth is significant enough where you can start living on that investment income to cover your base expenses, which by the way, I think this is kind of an underexplored topic with money as well, is that let's say that your base lifestyle is $25,000 and that you're able to achieve that with having $250,000 in the bank. That doesn't mean that you just don't do anything else. Maybe that means that you find something that you really love to do, but it only contributes an extra $20,000 a year, to your household. So if you're only making an extra $20,000 a year, but then you're supplementing that with the investment income on $250,000, well, then all of a sudden you put your $20,000 that you're earning from something that you just love to do, and you combine that with, let's say, $25,000 of the investment income. Well, then all of a sudden you're giving yourself a $45,000, household budget with just yourself, and all of a sudden, maybe that becomes pretty workable, and maybe that free time just allows you to continue to grow that thing that you're passionate about, right? So I think that, again, that puts you in a good spot from that standpoint, but really knowing how much you would need invested in different asset classes like real estate or stocks to be able to live on the investment income. And finally, the last one, number 5, and this is a big one for me, but it's not getting caught in the trap of just doing something for the money alone. I wish I had realized this earlier. And what do I mean by this? I feel like I've been on kind of the hunt a little bit for a profitable side hustle to do. And I think my first stab at it was really just, what's going to make me the most amount of money in a side hustle? It was going to be, hey, is it drop shipping? Is it going to be, if it's going to be an ebook, or if it's going to be, whatever it might be, all the different side hustles that are out there. And I feel like I was only focusing on how I could make money doing them, not focusing on, hey, is this something that I love to do? I do it for free, that sort of mentality. And I think that, for a long time, again, I was on the wrong path with that. But that's what's made me so excited about having this channel and about talking about stocks, because I love talking about how I've been able to grow and kind of transform my financial life. I love talking about that journey. I love helping people get better with their financial future as well. And it's something I'm so passionate in talking about and sharing and learning and all those things that I would do it for free. And right now I am doing it for free, but it's something that I would eventually love to continue to build a platform where, I could get paid clients eventually, or there's different ways to kind of, potentially monetize it in a way where you're not alienating your followers, but, so definitely something that has changed my perspective on it, that not just doing it for the money. And, Warren Buffett actually had a really good quote about this. He said that if you're just doing something for the money for a significant part of your life, he said he thinks that that's almost the same as saving up sex for old age, right? He's like, I don't think either of those really make sense. Like, certainly, if there's something that you love to do, you should do it as early as possible in your life. If you're in a healthy relationship, you should find a way to express that as early as you can in your life, right? So in both scenarios, don't put those things off. So with that in mind, these are the 5 things that I wish that I would have known about money. These are the 5 things that I'm doing differently with money now. I'd love to know what you guys think about these. What are some of your money lessons? Do you have thoughts about anything you disagree with about what I'm saying, with what I have learned, or some of my approaches? So love to hear from you. Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you guys next video.